Hello, hello, hello. How is everybody doing this evening? I want to first welcome you all to the power of the Black vote, voting and criminalization in Texas. My name is Tana Pradia, and I am a Zero Institute Justice Fellow. This conversation today, we will be talking about the power of the Black vote and voting and criminalization in Texas. When it comes to why we should vote, there is an intersection between healthcare for all, the over-criminalization of Black folks, secure housing, and ending homelessness. This is why getting and staying organized is important to me. Since 2018, I've been organizing with Positive Women's Network, Greater Houston area, a chapter I helped found to carry out a plan to respond to the 2020 election. We were able to reach Black folks that some get out the vote, GOTV campaigns, miss our call. Hard to reach. But let's be honest about who they're talking about. Black people, trans, and gender diverse people, immigrants, people with low income, people who are unstably housed. These are communities that other organizations call hard to reach. They're not hard to reach. Not at all. They are us, our friends, and our neighbors. We reach them every day, and we've mobilized our folks to take action. Our election work, all of our work, is grounded in our values. We believe that all women, trans, and gender diverse people should have the right to bodily autonomy and reproductive rights. We should have the right to control what does and does not happen to our bodies, our health, and our future. And let's be clear, abortion is healthcare. This means as Black women living with HIV, we are voting for equal pay, universal health care, abortion access, gender affirming care, and more. No one should take away our rights. As women living with HIV, we are fighting for liberation. Let me repeat that. We are fighting for liberation and making sure our voters are informed to mobilize to get to the polls in 2022. In 2020, Texas mobilized in a way that made real change in Houston. We had 24-hour voting locations, drive-through voting, mass mail-in ballots sent to every disabled person, and curbside voting for disabled folks. We worked tooth and nail to protect and expand voter rights. And there has been a lot of blowback. We've seen a truly terrible, unconstitutional abortion ban, attacks on trans rights, and more voter suppression bills than I care to count. But we're ready to fight in 2022. And we are coming for liberation as Black folks. I want to introduce a few of my friends that I've asked to join in on this conversation tonight. First, we have Roshan C. Evans, author of 4 books, including Stolen Identity, a 2021 political science graduate from the University of Houston downtown and co-founder of the grassroots organizing powerhouse, Pure Justice. Next, we have Mukam Jindavi, Tarrant County, Texas Black Women's Initiative, lead and advocate for the self-determination and empowerment of women. Next, we have Crystal Townsend, fourth generation Texan, advocate of Black, Indigenous people of color and TGLBTQ plus communities. A 2021-22 Unzombie Fellow and our moderator for this evening. Before we go any further, I have to thank our sponsors. This conversation is supported with funding from the Zero Project and Gilead Science. However, the views expressed tonight are our own. Now, let's get this conversation started. I will turn this over to Crystal.
Thank you so much, Tana, and thank you to everybody who is here with us in the Zoom and on Facebook. Feel free to share this conversation, like engage with us in the chat. We are really looking forward to having this conversation about the power of the Black vote. I want to just ground us in something that I have been thinking about. It's not only some words that Mitch McConnell made a couple of weeks ago when he just let this thing slip. He said African-American voters are voting in just as high a percentage as American voters, as if we are not also Americans. And so I also think about all of the ways that people have tried to historically suppress our voices and our vote and leave us out of the democratic process. I think about all of these things, and I think about how Black folks, regardless of how they try to keep us out, even last year, we had folks riding to Austin in slabs trying to get their voices heard and trying to be visible. We had comrades throwing rose petals on the Capitol floor. So Black folks and brown folks, we know how to show up and show out regardless of what they try to do. And I was looking up some stats. Black folks are 10th. We rank 10 in the country as the most engaged voters. So I think that's really saying something. So as we have this conversation here today, I want to just start, Tana, Roshan, and Mukam, with this first question. So we have some important elections coming up this year. How are you all feeling about the election season going into the March primary? And I'll start with you, Roshan.
So for me, I'm really trying to figure out, like, literally what's about to happen. Pre-COVID, I will be out in the community 3 to 5 times a week, book signing, just organizing, just for building purposes. Whereas, like incumbents or people that's running for elected positions, they would seek me out, and they would talk to me. And it would give me that opportunity to have that conversation with you, look at you and feel you out. I get a chance to feel your passion or lack thereof. And it kind of, COVID, it put everything into a position to where, we are not out like we would normally be. So you see the signs, you see people running, you may have ran into them a time or two, but yet you really hadn't had a chance to actually feel them out to see who they are. And it's kind of scary Because right now, at this very moment, you have so much that it's like, it's just, you getting buzzes everywhere from bail reform to like just, we don't have that opportunity to actually get a chance to see who we voting for outside of their websites, you know? So I'm trying to figure out what's about to happen because there's a lot at stake right now.
What about you, Mukum? How are you feeling about this election season?
Honestly, I'm motivated to do more because as we've seen that in 19 states, Republicans have enacted like voting restrictions. So that's really motivated me even more so to try to, get the word out and encourage people to vote. But even in preparing for this particular session and doing the research on some of the things that are going on, not just voting, but the whole electoral process, it's really motivated me to do more and to get involved on many different levels. Because with a lot of the gerrymandering and redistricting, which I will get into later, it really showed me how even if we get out the vote, that it's so tilted, for the Republicans that we could still end up, having our power and our votes marginalized and diluted because of those tactics. So it's made me want to get involved on many different levels, even to where we can, over the next 10 years, make sure that when it comes around again, that these sort of tactics and shenanigans will not be, able to fly. And so I'm just encouraged because my mentor, who is Kwame Ture, formerly Stokely Carmichael, would always say, if freedom is eternal, struggle is eternal. And so we cannot sit down, we cannot rest to think that, that those things that we fought for, we can sit down now and rest. No, the struggle continues.
Wow. Tana, how are you feeling?
Well, I have to say, what I'm seeing so far with the mail-in ballots, these new ID laws, it's scary. But at the end of the day, it's transforming my fear into action because we have lived through a pandemic going on 2.5 years. We changed Harris County. We got our voters to the polls. We made sure our voters had water, had snacks, but also had masks to do it. So what do we need? What do I need to do different this year? Come up with toolkits. Come up with something that our voters can understand. These are the steps you need to take. This is what we need to do as Black folks. Liberation, we coming for it. We demand it because our lives don't end at any time soon. Our lives have just begun. Our ancestors have fought through trauma, through voter suppression. So what is different now? The different now is we're in a pandemic, but we're gonna give our people, our Black people, that liberation that they need to get out to vote.
Wow. Thank y'all for opening up the conversation. I want to really highlight the key elections coming up. And so, Mukum, can you tell us what are those key elections we should be looking out for and why they are so important? And you're muted.
Sorry about that. And so as you mentioned, Crystal, the Texas primary election is March 1st. And I just want to stress to everyone that early voting In-person begins 1 week from today, February the 14th, and it runs through February the 24th. And so we have some district level elections that are coming up, and we have some statewide seats that are coming up. The statewide seats include governor, lieutenant governor, attorney general, land commissioner, agricultural commissioner, comptroller, and one of 3 seats on the Railroad Commission. And as we've witnessed the mishandling of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the voter suppression tactics that Republicans have enacted, negligence in the power grid last year, Texans should really understand why, these seats are important. The governor and the lieutenant governor, the way that they've handled the COVID and, some of the statements that they've made have been atrocious. So those are just some of the key races that are coming up. But I do want to stress that, voting does matter. And I wanted to just illuminate like a few reasons why it does matter. Number one is because we have historically used electoral politics as a Black community, as well as social protests, to increase power, not only of Black people, but of marginalized groups. It matters because these are the people we are determining who's making the decisions for us. We elect representatives who will craft policies, and these policies have a direct impact on us, whether it's from the federal legislation to the local level, which has even more so an impact on us. These are all decided by representatives. And so they work for us, and we are their constituents, and we have a right to hold them accountable. Another reason why voting matters is because it shapes our future. There are resources that come in, and these resources are distributed to help community. And coming from a Pan-Africanist activist organizer background, I'm aware of all of the shortcomings of electoral politics and reforms in that process. But as Stacey Abrams said it best, that voting is not magic, and it's not going to solve every problem, but it is the only way in a democracy that we can make our voices heard. And it's when we decide who is going to be making decisions on our behalf. So voting does matter. And if it didn't matter, these Republicans would not be attempting to manipulate this electoral system to our detriment. And I want to just say finally that voting matters because it's a civil right. And one thing that I learned from the reproductive justice movement is that rights are indivisible. And so once you have and interdependent, and so you can't enjoy your civil rights without all of the other rights and the human rights. And so that's just a few things that I wanted to say in terms of voting, in terms of some of the seats that are coming up, and then the dates for voting in the primary.
That was amazing, and it was so much, so rich in information. And I think that's important. Why we have to be, somebody said, a community of support. Have a community support plan. Have folks that you can reach out to. You don't have to know everything, but if you know someone who knows, then they can help you navigate. Roshan, I wanted to ask you if you had anything to add to that, especially on a local level. Like, what are some of the elections we should be looking out for, and why?
So before, I want to actually veggie back on something Mook said. And she said electives craft policy. And you'll hear me say this often, but if you had never been through anything except school, you probably have no business creating, crafting, or pushing policy. Like, if anybody gonna be creating policy, it need to be people impacted by policy. And if you don't understand how policy impact communities, you probably have no business in a room debating what laws or policies should be implemented unless you are in the room with those that's actually impacted so they can actually tell you how laws impact communities of color or impoverished communities. As a Black man in America, yes, we are all on this Zoom. Y'all can see me. I know that. Y'all know I am a Black man. But all of the races are important. But some of the races that's particularly important to me as an individual are the judicial seats. I get sick and tired of watching people of color or poor people get the heaviest end of the stick, not because they are always guilty of crimes, but because they are poor and can't afford to actually pay for innocence, or they come from certain neighborhoods or was in the right place at the wrong time. But when it comes to who's in office, it matters because politics impact everything about us, from our education to flood control to policing, again, to how we are sentenced in the courtroom. Like politics is the key, and it gives us access to the resources that we need in our communities.
Yeah. Roshan, I don't know if you were trying to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, actually, I was saying that when it comes to politics, we need to make sure that people actually care about our issues, that they actually understand. And if they don't understand and care about our issues, that's where a lot of our problems come in at. It furthers the generational problems that we have when the people in politics are creating these policies that they don't understand how it impact the people with all the problems in the first place. So this is a big deal.
Absolutely. And I just want to follow up. Roshan, you as an author, you talk openly about your experience, even on social media, you are really engaging with people about your experience navigating the legal system. And so what would you say, what would you tell people about voting after a criminal conviction?
I would say, don't do it. If you got a criminal conviction, you must wait until you are off probation and parole, because if you cast that ballot while on any type of probation, people are waiting, to victimize you. If you want to vote after you been through the system, signed a plea deal, found guilty of a crime, whatever the case may have been, you have to make sure that you complete your term of sentence. So once you have made it off probation and parole, you are free, you can vote, and I would say vote in every election. If you don't have time to figure out who's who, find the credible, trusted sources so you can figure out maybe what's best for your community. If you don't have the time to do your own research or get a chance to visit some of these candidates or talk to them to understand who they are. But I do want to touch on, voting while even having a sex offense. For those people, they may be on some type of registry, but yet not on a probation or parole. So if you are not on probation or parole, but on a registry, you can still vote. Just don't cast that ballot while on probation or parole, or you'll find yourself in some type of trouble that you probably don't want to be
in. Yeah. Just a real quick follow-up question. What if they have been arrested or in jail, say they're in Harris County Jail, but they haven't been convicted? What do they do?
Thank you for that question, Crystal. So there was a time where, when you was incarcerated, you could not register, you could not cast a ballot. As a matter of fact, in most places you can't, and this is one of the problems with bail reform. See, people don't understand that we continuously victimize people because they are poor, and we don't realize these are the reasons we are victimizing people. So you have people, they catch a charge, regardless of the charge, like you have this bill or bond of $500, $700, $2,000, and you can't pay it, right? Because you're poor or whatever the case may be. You can't come up with $750. I don't care if I got pulled over for 2 ounces of marijuana, right? So I'm stuck in jail. Elections is up. I can't register to vote because I'm a resident inside of Harris County Jail. Yet you have a wealthy person that just got caught for murder, and their bail is $750, and they're able to pay it 10% or not. So now I'm able to pay this bail, and since I am out on bond, have not been sentenced yet, I can still register to vote, and I can still cast a ballot to vote simply because I was able to pay a cash bail at the courthouse or at the jailhouse. So now, you have Project Orange. They actually been working around elections in Harris County now for a couple election cycles. And now the coalition grew a little bit larger. The team has grew to Pure Justice, to H-Town Power, and a couple other groups to where we will be going inside of Harris County, continuing the work, registering citizens inside of Harris County Jail to make sure that they are registered. And not only are we making sure that they are registered, but Harris County will actually be a polling location where citizens inside of Harris County Jail can actually vote. And that's 2 places that this is happening. It's here in Harris County now, and Cook County up in Chicago.
Thank you for breaking that down. I think that even answers someone's question in the chat. And they have a follow-up question. So let me just be very clear. Can someone vote while in jail? And they said at the city, but Harris County consolidated their jails a couple of years ago. So everybody goes to one location, right? Downtown.
Correct.
So there's no longer city jails, there's just Harris County Jail downtown.
Correct.
And if someone is there but can't post bond, they haven't been sentenced, they haven't been convicted, they just have been arrested and are awaiting trial, they can still get registered and vote, correct?
As of now, if you are a citizen in Harris County Jail and cannot make bond because you simply don't have it, you can still register and you can still cast that ballot, because Harris County Jail will be a polling place, because here in America, we actually believe in due process. Guilty, innocent until proven guilty. So we are actually trying to enforce that right here in Harris County.
Thank you. And I know they have tried to, voter suppression again. So we in Harris County can vote at any polling location, no matter where we are, like zone 2. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that's changed. So if someone is in Harris County Jail and they live in Harris County, for example, but they can still vote no matter, regardless of if it is their primary voting location, right?
If you asking me, as of now, to my understanding, I can go to any polling place and cast my ballot.
Yep, that's what I understand too. Now, what if they live in Fort Bend County and they get arrested in Harris County? That's a good question. We might need some help in the chat, but the question in the chat made me think of that. So, Roshan, if you can answer that, great. But if not, go ahead.
When we go in Harris County Jail, we will not only take long forms for Harris County residents, but we will also have short forms as well for those that may be a Fort Bend resident. So we can still register them. Now, as it comes to the voting process, now that is a question I would have to actually go figure out the answer to.
Okay, good. Thank you for that. I want to kind of shift the conversation just a little bit to bring in like this current pandemic. And I'm bringing in the pandemic just because of this is kind of like a real time replay of what many of us experienced 40 years ago with HIV. It was a public health issue that became, you know, I guess so out of control that it's kind of turning into something that's long term, something that we are just living with. And what we've seen the government do, they take it from the government responsibility and they shift it to the personal responsibility. It's your personal responsibility to do X, Y, or Z. And if you don't do it, you will be criminalized. And so I bring that into the conversation to really talk about HIV and folks living with HIV and how they have some human rights. And it's important for us to uphold those human rights, but also recognize that people today are being criminalized for their HIV status. So Tana, tell us, what rights do people living with HIV in Texas have?
People that's living with HIV have every right to live free from stigma, discrimination, period. But we also know that this pandemic reminds me, as a woman living with HIV, that this is no different from the beginning of the HIV epidemic 40 years ago. So when we talk about HIV in the Black community, but also HIV criminalization, we have to think about, in Texas, we reformed HIV criminalization law in 1994. But we all know that bills show up every legislative session. And we have to be organized to look out for these things. Just like last year, 2021, we had HB 369, which was authored by Representative Tom Chattock, which would increase the statute of limitation from 2, which would have been a misdemeanor, to 5 years and made it a felony. So crimes of aggravated assault, you're attacking Black folks. If PWN's rapid response team and Texas Strike Force had not taken action, this bill could have became law. And it would, how can you end the HIV epidemic in Texas and you keep every 2 years bringing these laws, writing these laws that are affecting people everyday lives? People will go into hiding. People will not get tested. People will not do anything. That makes disclosure hard. But let's be real. Why is it that HIV is the only disease in Texas that is always at the forefront? When we talk about stigma, that is the first thing people talk about is your status. It is not about that I am a Black woman who has grandkids, who's a mother, but also a great grandmother that wants to live free from stigma and discrimination, but also have the right to be a human being in Texas. And no one will take that right. I will fight tooth and nail. I will organize. I will make sure community has everything that they need to take action to fight against my people. These are my people, but this is also me. This could also be my grandkids. This could also be my children. This could be my brother. So we have to think about and fight, but also it is about making sure that our community, when we ask them to fight, that they have every testimony, know how to write their testimony, have that action alert, have those phone numbers of legislators who they can call, but also it's important to find a champion. that is for the people, not for corporations, but for the people. And we have to take the fear out of, I'm afraid. No, I'm not afraid. I'm transforming that fear into action. So that means I want that action to be the way it needs to be for the people living with HIV.
Yes.
And I will also say this, and I want to add, Black women living with HIV are always the ones who have to take a stand. It's our community, rights, voice, body, autonomy that they keep coming for. We will not allow the racial injustice, and I'm gonna repeat that, racial injustice of systematic racism, and I'm gonna repeat that, systematic racism to come between us and our right to vote. Last year, we educated, blasted out on social media and created tools for our community on all these bad voting laws in Texas, and we won. We didn't win every last one of them, but we won. We will not give into all of the injustices that are being done to communities of color and people living with HIV, because people living with HIV are not the issue. The issue is lack of adequate resources and the stigma we face because of being diagnosed with HIV. But the main thing is being Black.
Wow, gave me chills. So, Tana, all of that and then some, you made me really think about, number one, how you mentioned HB 369 from the last year's session, and how in the language, the author didn't even write HIV. He wrote communicable diseases. So that included HIV, it included COVID, it included so many things that are not, that should not be criminalized. And so I think about, as you said, it was Black women leading that effort, organizing, trying to get people's public comments, Black women living with HIV and their allies, trying to get folks together to really stop that bill from passing. Because if it had passed, we would be dealing with something more severe, especially in this time of COVID. So I just want to highlight, I think it's really important that as we work in coalition, we are working across coalition. So happy to have Pure Justice, like throwing down with you and folks in Tarrant County and the Texas Black Women's Health Initiative. Like, all of these things make it so important for us to be able to see liberation.
But Crystal, I have to say one thing, that Ciro has a website, and you can go to that website, and these are buzzwords. When they say communicable disease, it's not specific. That's a broad word, but these are buzzwords. So if you put those buzzwords with HIV, it's gonna come up. Buzzwords are very important. And I see Kamaria put the link into the chat box, but these are buzzwords. So when you fighting, you have to know which avenues you can use, where to go, people to talk to join forces. And that's one thing I can say about the Texas Strike Force. We off the chain when it comes to our Black people and our communities.
Absolutely. So Mukum, I want to bring you into the conversation to really get your perspective on how we can continue to challenge the stigma of being diagnosed with HIV, especially while Black. What's your thought on that?
Especially while Black, because we are the ones that are overrepresented in the criminal justice system. As we were speaking, if you're poor and Black, and HIV positive, you're going to be overrepresented in that criminal justice system. But I think that people living with HIV must understand their power. And through organizations like the Texas Strike Force, you really, through their training, come to understand what your power is and how it can connect to voting, and how we should all be fighting for human rights and the dignity of people living with HIV. In 2019, Texas had ended that year with 97,844 Texans living with HIV, or almost 98,000. That was a couple of years ago. So it's pretty safe to say that by today, we're at 100,000 people living with HIV in Texas. So with all of those people united towards a common goal and a common unified purpose, then that is the type of power that can make or break elections. And so it's important for HIV advocates to leverage their power and to leverage their votes in support of candidates whose policies align with, HIV criminalization, fighting and reforming those state criminalization laws. These policies are often determined at the state and local levels. And so we just need to work with, those officials that are our allies to make sure that, that we fight against those. Because like Tana was saying, even though we don't have criminalization laws, if they're general assault laws, they're still coming around in some different iteration. And so you have to be vigilant, like the Texas Strike Force is, in, seeking out those and, and galvanizing people to go to the state capitol.
Absolutely. Before, we are coming to the end of this conversation, and it's been so rich with information and your passion and all the things. I want to ask folks in the Zoom room if you have questions for the panelists or some reflections you want to share. You can raise your hand, come off mute, or just type it in the chat. We'll take a few minutes for some thoughts, questions, reflections. And I see this in the chat from Kamaria. A thought reflection is Texas does not play. Thank you so much, Tana. And also highlighting that HIV is not a crime awareness day. This will be the inaugural event. We'll kick off on February 28th this year. So cool. So we will make sure folks get the link to that so they can sign up and participate. And just know that we talked about criminalization. If you have any questions about that, Zero Project is on top of that. I see Lucy, I see your hand.
Mute myself. Yes, thank you very much. This has been very informative. I do register people to vote, and I want to get something clear. If someone, I know in Harris County, we can vote in any polling place. But if someone is in jail in Harris County and they are a Fort Bend resident and they're not getting out of jail because they can't pay the bail, can they vote in jail in that polling place? Can they vote as?
So that was the question I needed to get more information on.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I didn't know. Just. Yeah, that's a really important question. That was a good question. Whoever posed that, but no, I do need to figure out if they will be able to vote. So that's something I'll be looking into.
Thank you, Roshan. And rest assured, Roshan is going to look into it, and then we'll post responses. We can post responses on H-Town Power on Facebook. But I think that's a really, really good question to really find the answer to. Kamaria, I see your hand.
Thank you, Crystal. This has been a really powerful, amazing conversation. I'm not from Texas, I'm from Florida. Some people say same difference, but we don't organize the way y'all do. I'll just say that. But my question is, I heard, Rashawn, I heard you mention Cook County and Harris County has this, I guess, model of registering people while they're in jail. Those are literally the only two counties doing that? And like, where can people go to find out how to organize to like model that in their state?
So to be 200% honest with you, you know, we have this pretty decent sheriff here. Like, he's a pretty decent guy, you know. And we just had to build a relationship with him and figure out, you know, like, what could we do to make sure that we are not, you know, continuously punishing people because they are poor. And for those that stuck in jail, it's like, okay, is it right to not allow them to not register or participate in exercising their civic duty because they are a resident, temporarily a resident in Harris County Jail, in comparison to the wealthy ones that can actually pay bail? And he allowed it. So we trying to, like, hopefully one day, you know, this, what we're doing here in Harris County and in Cook County, will overflow into other cities. You know, this need to be happening all across America. So hopefully one day we can make that happen.
Yeah.
But build a relationship with the sheriff. Answer to the question.
Thank y'all. So as we wrap up the panel discussion, I want to ask everybody, Tana, Lukum, Roshan. Earlier, Tana talked about being ready to fight in 2022 and coming for liberation for Black folks. So what does liberation look like to you? And I'll start with Lukum.
All right, thank you, Crystal. So I was pondering on this, and just I have a very quick statement on that. And so my idea of liberation is what my favorite author, Bell Hooks, who recently passed, said. It's when we've dismantled imperialist, white, supremacist, capitalist patriarchy. And, you know, she would always say all of those together, and people would chuckle because she always included all of those. But she was very serious, because those are all of the systems that oppress and exploit our people. And so until we are able to dismantle those, the struggle continues.
I love that. What about you, Roshan?
So I like to piggyback on Wukum again, you know, dismantling racism, equity, resources, and opportunity.
And last but certainly not least, Tana.
What does liberation look like for me? Freedom for all. Freedom for all. And freedom to live with dignity, respect, and have access to everything that we deserve, just like anyone else in America. We are Americans, so we need everything that everyone else has, and that's freedom to do, as they say, quote unquote, American way of life.
Wow. Thank y'all so much. I love that folks in the Zoom room are also responding to the question to say like what their definition of liberation looks like. So keep it coming. Now I want to turn it back over to Tana so she can close us out and really give us a call to action, because there is more work to do and work to be done this year. So Tana, I'll turn it over to you.
I want to say thank you all for joining the power of the Black vote tonight. I want to also thank my sponsors. I also really want to thank Zero for everything they have taught me this year. in the Institute. I want to thank my panelists. This is my family. Y'all are my family. Thank you, Crystal, for moderating this conversation. And in that close, we want to offer you a few ways you can take action on what you heard tonight. And one of the ways is join an organization, Pure Justice, Positive Women's Network, H-Town Power, Texas Strike Force, which is off the chain and led by Black women living with HIV, are two examples of organizations you can connect with to get organized and to make your political home. And also, the most important thing, take the pledge to vote, to stay updated on who and the issues that are on your ballot, but also this is our lives. So next we have Pure Justice is hosting a public screening of candidates tonight. If you are free at 6:30 to 8:30, come out and join Pure Justice virtual event. So the candidate elects incumbents can pitch to you and tell you why they feel you should vote for them. That's an important, because that's the judges. And we all know what our judges do to us, Black folks in Texas. So join Pure Justice tonight at 6:30. So I'm gonna leave you with words of encouragement from Martin Luther King. Our lives begin to end the day we become silent about the things that matter to us. And that is vote, vote, vote. And y'all have a very blessed evening, and thank you for joining us.